HBO's The Last of Us returns with a new season on Max. Every path has a price. 5 years after the events of the first season, Joel and Ellie are drawn into conflict with each other in a world even more dangerous than the one they left behind. CNN calls The Last of Us exquisite, fully realized, and worthy of the hype. The new season of the HBO original series, The Last of Us, premieres April 13th on Max. And listen to the official The Last of Us podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
The NBA playoffs are here, and I'm getting my bets in on FanDuel. Talk to me, Chuck GPT. What do you know?
All sorts of interesting stuff, even Charles Barkley's greatest fear.
Hey, nobody needs to know that.
New customers bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. 21 plus and present in Virginia. Must be first online real money wager. $5 deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus vest that expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This episode is brought to you by Chevy Silverado. When it's time for you to ditch the blacktop and head off-road, do it in a truck that says no to nothing. The Chevy Silverado Trail Boss. Get the rugged capability of its Z71 suspension and 2-inch factory lift. Plus, impressive torque and towing capacity thanks to an available Duramax 3-liter turbo diesel engine. Where other trucks call it quits, you'll just be getting started. Visit Chevy.com to learn more.
Hello and welcome back to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast and our match report following a pretty dire home display at home to Everton. A game that was peltering towards a 0-0 ended up in a 94th Abdoulaye Doucouré winner, meaning Forest lost for the first time at home in the Premier League since November to Everton by 1-0. I'm your host, George Edwards, and I've got Baz alongside me for this one. Baz, it makes sense, I suppose, to start at the end with that Murillo mistake that led to that counter-attack and that finish from Doucouré. What were your feelings when that goal went in? Frustration, disappointment, a bit of both, or did you just get out and leave?
I didn't leave, but I wasn't surprised. My thought throughout the entire game is Everton are doing to us what we do to everyone else. So, I mean, we played poorly, but they outdid us tactically as well. And so I wasn't in the slightest bit surprised that that they did what we do to it, like what we've done to Man City and Liverpool and everyone, is basically take one of our attacks and turn it against us. Yeah,
they stifled, they frustrated, and yes, it was a horrible watch. And even your dog is not a fan, Baz.
No.
So let's look at the team news then. So from that Villa team, I think it was 3 changes, wasn't there? So Murillo came in to start as we expected with his eligibility. He came in. Jota came in as well, and so did Chris Wood. Dropped out was Yates, Ilanga and Morato. So Matt Sells played in goal. There was a back four of Moreno, Murillo, Milenkovic and Nico Williams. Dominguez, Gibbs-White and Anderson midfield with Hudson-Odoi, Chris Wood returning and Jota as the front three. Now, a few surprises in there. Firstly, Ilanga being dropped. We thought that might happen with the potential injury, but it looked to me like it was just a selection choice, which I thought might happen if Chris Wood wasn't fit. But given the sort of the good news that Wood was fit, I thought it would be Hudson-Odoi, Ilanga and Wood. So Jota coming in there. Any surprises for you there, Baz?
Actually, I was less like we'll get to it, I suppose, later on. But like in the second half, the start of the second half, while Ilanga was the subs were doing all their warm-ups and stuff, and I was watching Ilanga, and he didn't do any running. All he was doing was hamstring stretches. Right. So that kind of suggests actually, yeah, he does have a problem, and he's a little bit worried about it. So in that way, it wasn't that much of a surprise. What was more of a surprise, I thought, was we didn't really line up as that sort of 4-2-3-1 kind of thing, or not even a 4-3-3. It was like, at times it was a 4-4-2 with Wood and Jota up front, and other time, again, Everton outdid us, and it was like we just didn't have a midfield for much of the game as well.
Yeah, I thought midfield was all right first half, but second half especially, I thought the midfield really faded. So in terms of how the game started, I think everybody was waiting for it to kick into life, waiting for something to happen, and it never really did. And I think Everton are very good at stopping momentum, not letting you build momentum. You know, if Forest will break 3, they'd just cynically hack somebody down. So there's a couple of challenges early on. There's the Harrison one, where he slides in on Anderson and doesn't get booked. I think it's about 7 or 8 minutes in.
Yeah.
Now, if that's 60, 70 minutes, that's guaranteed a booking. So how that's not a booking, I don't know. And then there was one a few minutes later, wasn't there? Branthwaite on Jota. And he just sort of barges him to the floor. And I don't even know if the referee gives it to start with until Jota goes down. So a clear plan there from Everton to ruffle some feathers, to not let Forest build momentum. And they did that so well, Baz, didn't they, like you said?
Yeah. And it completely worked. And like we hear opposition fans complain about Yates and his physical approach to the game. They just did that to us and totally stopped us playing. I suggested in the first half in our group chat that our midfield seemed to be going man for man with their midfield, but I'm not actually sure I was right about that. I think it was the other way around. And that's because the other feature of the entire game, but especially in those early stages where they were roughing us up, was also that when we did get the ball, we just couldn't pass to a red shirt.
Yes.
And they just cut us out completely.
I can't remember, particularly a first half with so much, like a 10-yard pass that would just go 5 yards too short or 5 yards too quick, or we couldn't have that sort of fluidity that's so normally there. It was very weird watch, and it was almost out of the blue, wasn't it? Because you look at that second half against Aston Villa that we had that looked like it had kicked new life into us, not that we needed that. And that was on the back of 120 minutes at Brighton, then a midweek at United, and you thought that might be the leggy performance. Whereas we've had a week off now, we came back, and it was very much a surprise, wasn't it? This Forest performance.
It was. I mean, one of the things I liked about I only watched the Villa game on TV, but what I liked about it was it kind of showed we've got this reputation of deserved reputation for sitting back and letting the opposition have possession. But obviously 2-0 down, we had to take the game to Villa, and we played a different way. And this game was crying out for much of the same thing, because Everton were playing like us. They were letting us have the ball and then challenging us to try and get through them. And we couldn't even get past the first man. No. We needed some of that Villa approach against them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we were almost sort of trying to be a bit too patient and a bit too perfect. And then we'd get frustrated and have a shot from 20, 25 yards and ruin the attack. There was not that sort of bite or determination that there normally is. But in terms of defensively in the first half, I think Sal had to make one save, didn't he, from Garner, who was allowed to roam free. But for all of it was a good save for themselves, but for all of our attacking bluntness, I never really felt threatened by Everton in a goal-scoring sort of sense, did you?
Not really. It's just frustrating because we couldn't get anywhere near them. And you always got the sense that this was the way Everton wanted the game to go.
Yeah. So in terms of the chances Forest managed to create, then I mean, Chris Wood was a very isolated man, wasn't he? I can't remember a shot on goal that he had in his return to the team. I think the only really notable effort was Hudson-Odoi, wasn't it? He was trying the whole half to cut inside. Was it O'Brien, wasn't it, their fullback? And he succeeded at it once, really, and it was an okay shot, but straight at Pickford, really. But apart from that, I think Moreno had a decent maraud forward, but there was nothing really in front of goal from Forest. Now, for me, I think I said in the group chat at half time that I thought we were missing Elanga and Aina as two sort of outlets, as two the pacey players that they are. We couldn't really have anything to break the theme that we'd got ourselves into. And I also thought that with Moreno on the left, it means Nico's not on the left. And Hudson-Odoi looked a bit lost there because him and Nico had such a good relationship now that they're built on that left side. With Moreno there's not that understanding. And I think Moreno, everybody has accepted now, is a bit of a downgrade on Nico. So for you, what was the main reason Forest couldn't get that fluidity in that first half?
There was part of it was, as you say, Hudson-Odoi was our main threat at carrying the ball. And he wanted to do his thing. He never once tried to go outside O'Brien. But as soon as he cut in, he just ran into a wall of blue shirts. Because everyone knows that's what Hudson-Odoi likes to do. So, if Nico had been on that side, you'd probably have Nico going outside him to stretch the defence, so they wouldn't have that same thing. Whereas, that understanding isn't there with Moreno. We didn't get... I think he did one of his trademark outside of the right foot crossfield passes in the first half and one in the second half, but he barely saw the ball, did Morgan, because Garner was just on him. I mean, I was very jumping to the end. I was very surprised when Elliot Anderson got Player of the Match, because I was like, how can you select anyone out of that? But if there was a Player of the Match, it was Jimmy Garner who was outstanding.
Yeah,
he kept Morgan completely quiet, and then Anderson and Dominguez. I mean, Dominguez did a lot of running, and occasionally sort of like managed to break with the ball, but that nothing ever came off for any of them because they were just shut down immediately.
And I know that this season injuries haven't really came at the same time like they have now, but for me, I don't know if you agree, I think Aina maybe has been the biggest miss because we've not had him for 2 games. And I think Dominguez had to play fullback at Villa. That really didn't work, and we missed him today. You think back to other injuries we've had. Hudson-Odoi was out for a few games, but Jota filled in. Anderson did out there. Gibbs White and Anderson were out for a couple of games, but we managed to cope. So do you think Aina's been maybe the biggest miss so far? Because even Chris Wood, when Jota filled in and the one you did, it wasn't as much of a void, I don't think, as Aina.
I think we've been saying it for a long time. He's an incredibly good fullback because not only is he good defensively, but because of his two-footedness, he's good defensively because the winger can't go inside or outside of him. But that also works attacking because he can go outside or come inside. And we've often seen it like obviously the Ribena goal where he just said I was knackered, because he does cover a lot of ground as well.
Yes, indeed. So on to the second half then, and much like the first half, we're expecting maybe Forest to come out with a new lease of life with an attacking sort of pace. But for me, I put in my notes here that I thought Forest lost control of the midfield in the second half. I didn't think it was too bad, but I think Anderson put a shift in first half and he just sort of ran out of legs second half for me. There was a chance on 55 minutes, Hudson-Odoi. He was found by Anderson, charged in, and then another similar shot straight at Pickford. But it looked like sort of a Hudson-Odoi moment or something like that would be the moment of magic, because I couldn't see Forest creating a chance in the normal way that they played. So it looked like maybe a mistake or a long shot was going to break the difference, didn't it?
Yeah. I'm quite like, I think putting Jota up front is a good thing. One, I can remember reading that he used to play there as a striker in Portugal quite often, but also it sort of keeps him out of harm's way with his ridiculous challenges as well. So I thought I was kind of happy at him playing like up front like that. But apart from his usual sort of buzzing around and making a nuisance of himself, he didn't really have any cutting edge whatsoever. There was a little point, I think towards the end of the first half, maybe it was at the beginning of the second half, because Morgan was getting marked out of the game, Jota started playing in that sort of number 10 role a little bit more. And just for a few minutes, we got a little bit more fluidity because we had someone to receive the ball and then look for the pass. But apart from that, we just had nothing. We couldn't connect our players together in any way whatsoever. And as you said, like all the passes were just running a little bit short, and Everton would just bring it back.
Yeah, I've been critical of Jota in the past on this podcast quite vocally, but I thought he did have one of his better games, really. But it was a game where, you know, he needs service, doesn't he? Shown by the Villa game, he was getting stuck in, but he needs service, and he didn't get that. Wood didn't get that, and yeah, it was just a pretty poor day. And there was a couple of penalty appeals, wasn't there? So Everton had a few that I don't really think were. There was that Murillo one that was outside of the box, wasn't it? The foul, and then Yatesy went into was it Harrison?
I thought Harrison's foot was high and he'd kicked Yates in the head at first.
Yeah.
So I was like, why are they complaining about it?
Yeah, yeah. No, I did agree with that. And then and we had one, didn't we, with O'Brien sort of wrestling with Wood after a ball in from Gibbs White. But I think we can agree that wasn't really a penalty either.
I thought at the time it was, but I just had a chance to have a quick look at the highlights on YouTube afterwards, and it would have been soft to have had it given. He definitely had a hand in his back, but I think he was falling over before it.
Yeah. And then the change we were all sort of hoping for and expecting came on the hour, didn't it? Elanga came on for Jota. But then I thought it was quite weird because, as you mentioned, Gibbs White out wide, and he sort of stayed out wide, didn't he? I thought that would mean us going back to our sort of more conventional midfield. Morgan shifted inside, Elanga on the right. But Morgan stayed out on the right, stayed isolated, and Elanga couldn't get into the game. As you mentioned, maybe some fitness troubles. So I thought that was quite baffling for me. I would have far preferred Morgan in the middle. What did you think about that change?
Yeah, it was like we were playing a 4-4-2 with Elanga and Wood up front, which, I mean, like there was the Ipswich game where Elanga basically could play where he wanted to, and I'm guessing like Nuno was going for something like that, but it's a waste of Morgan having him out wide like that. And he didn't see any of the ball, and Elanga again, because the way Everton were playing, they kept it very, very congested, which meant that Elanga never had the chance to use any of his pace either. He needs that little 2.5 yards to just bring up his acceleration, and he just never got that chance.
And at Ipswich away, it was Dominguez who was on the other wing and Gibbs White in midfield, wasn't it? It was as a Gibbs White and Anderson pivot, and that worked really well. And I thought Forest could have coped with doing that, but Forest didn't do that, and it was Gibbs White, so it did baffle me. And from then, it was really Everton the ones that were creating chances, wasn't it? There was after that penalty appeal, there was a long ball from Tarkowski all the way over the Forest midfield, similar ball to that, but the Rodgers goal the other day, just obviously from a bit further back, and it's Ndiaye, isn't it, who controls it, and Tells makes a good save, and Harrison shot over the bar from inside the box as well, and then 2 penalty appeals. So it was Everton really taking the game to Forest. And I was quite surprised, really, that there was no sort of reaction from Forest. It was quite a defeatist, maybe. And it reminded me of the Newcastle second half, when we were okay first half and then second half defensive, we capitulated. Obviously, we didn't concede till the 91st minute. But it was a real onslaught from Everton, if you like, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that Harrison one especially, that was the winner. And my only hope was like maybe that was their chance and they've missed it. But that was kind of clutching at straws a little bit.
Yeah, and then it seemed to just be drifting towards a 0-0, didn't it? And I even said, I said to John next to me at 92nd minute or something, it's good that, even though we've not had the best performance, we can play this badly and still get a point in the Premier League. And then what? 2 minutes later, guess what happens?
What I said, as we said, it was our corner. But what I noticed just in the build up to coming up to the corner, so the ball had sort of gone out to the left wing. Hudson-Odoi had cut inside, and then Anderson and Moreno, one of the two was on the ball, and they ran into each other and
yes, they did.
Over.
Yeah, I lost my head at that.
Yeah, and so I turned to the bloke next to me and went, "That just sums up our entire game, doesn't it?" And somehow the ball managed to stay in our possession and get towards the centre and got knocked out for the corner. But I was like, "That's just typical," and I kind of knew they were going to score from that because of that. I mean, we had the thing, the Villa goal, Jota scored, where it looked like he was going to run into Anderson,
yes,
but he took the ball off him. But to do it twice in 2 games, it just shows that something's not right at the moment. I think, maybe people's because we've played with such a small squad for a long season, maybe some legs are going, maybe some like their like heads are a little bit slower than they normally would be.
Yeah, and after that, Grandad actually turned to me and said the exact same thing you said. That sums us up today. And then obviously Everton go up the end and score from the corner, and the corner obviously comes Forest clearer, and then it comes back to them. And so often today, they just didn't get the ball in the box quick enough. It was obvious. Cross it. And I know they're probably fearful because Everton are a big side and we didn't really win much in the air. But at that point of the game, we just got to get in the box. But obviously we didn't. Everton pressed as well. And then Murillo obviously missed controls, 3-on-1. It's brilliant composure from McNeil to find Doucouré, who sweeps it in. And
that was the other thing as well, when McNeil comes on, and it was like only like the 88th minute or something when McNeil comes on, and the bloke next to me just went, he always scores against us.
Yeah, and so does Doucouré, doesn't he, as well?
Yeah.
And they combined, yeah. And about the goal, obviously Murillo will be feeling down about it. But I think my main takeaway from it is the expression that, Gibbs White and Murillo are two of Forest's most expressive players. And those mistakes are going to happen. Obviously, Morgan probably makes more of them, but when Murillo does, they're in positions like that's where we concede. So I think it's very important that Forest protect Murillo, don't you, and allow him to still have that confidence and freedom to express himself.
Oh, absolutely. It's I think in the post-match interview, Nuno said it's about covering for everyone else. And what I noticed again when I was watching the highlights is the ball from McNeil. It's right next to Moreno, like it just cuts. Like it's almost like if he'd noticed or whatever it was, just managed to stick his leg out, it wouldn't have reached Doucouré. And it's that kind of thing. If that little bit of cover that we normally have, that little bit of 6 inches of extra sharpness would have covered for Murillo's mistake, and it wouldn't have mattered. But that's just the way it goes on a game like today.
And there was no cover in the performance, and that obviously meant after 2 minutes of fight back from Forest, after the goal, it ended Forest 0, Everton 1.
The 1865 Match Report.
At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality walking shoes, which might lead to another discovery.
40,000 steps, baby. Who's on top now, Karen?
You've taken the office step challenge a step too far. Don't worry, though. Sierra also has yoga gear. It might be a good place to find your zen. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Hello and welcome back to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast and our match report following Forest's home defeat to Everton. It's now time for a review from the opposition by Adam by the Call of Everton.
So here's me looking back on the game this afternoon. Delighted with the result, to be honest. Forest has not been an easy place to go this season, evidenced by your position in the league table. And I think we played really, really well. It's one of the best performances under David Moyes. There were many throwbacks to kind of the old days of David Moyes in that performance for me, going to a difficult place, playing well, and then nicking a result. I thought we defended very well when we needed to. We didn't allow Forest to create that many problems, and we caused plenty of problems for Nottingham Forest. I thought it was a brilliant finish from Doucouré. He was set up well by McNeil. Great to see him back in the side. And then it wasn't an easy opportunity for Doucouré, but as he so often does in those kind of really big pivotal moments, he's just a man that you could rely on. I was surprised that Forest didn't make it more difficult for us. I was expecting a much tougher game. You know, I think back to the reverse fixture towards the end of the year, I think it was. And it was kind of chalk and cheese. I don't know if Forest are tailing off a little bit, maybe players not 100% fit. But yeah, I think we got our setup spot on and caused plenty of problems. And it was a great performance, and I think we did deserve to get something out of the game, and we did well to get the win.
I think he summed it up very well there, because I think it was a very even game. But if a team was going to edge it, it probably was Everton. And I want to talk about that element of surprise that Adam mentioned there, because there was a feeling of surprise at full time, because the performance was so out of the blue, and because this season Forest have done a job over half teams so easily, haven't they? You know, you think back to that Wolves away game, the Everton away game, they all just felt so easy, and the result was never a doubt from the moment Forest kicked off, whereas today they never really got going. So, yeah, it's very surprising, Buzz.
Yeah, the whole thing was very flat. It was not like, again, I wasn't at the game, but from watching it back, the Bournemouth game where it was like we basically got pulled to pieces. Or the Newcastle game, the last home loss, where it was like it was our fault because we kept on piling forwards and Newcastle just hit us on the break again and again and again. Whereas this one was, yes, Everton tactically outdid us, especially in midfield, but we were flat. We didn't seem to have the energy. It was a hot day, but I mean, yeah, you'd expect us to at least get the runs and do that sort of thing. And as Nuno said, we lost too many of the duels. As soon as it's a 50-50 ball, it was Everton's every time. And that's what was uncharacteristic, why it was such a big surprise.
Yeah, I think it has to be up there with one of the worst performances of the season. Particularly at home, maybe that Newcastle one trumps it, but I probably think for 90 minutes, that was perhaps the worst display Forest have had at home. And in terms of the panicking, because I think it's very split. 50% of the fans are getting worried now and thinking, you know, as I'm starting to think, you know, it's classic Forest in a situation where they've got a position in the palm of their hands and they're starting to slowly let it fade away. I'll never forget that COVID season. I'll never forget Forest being classic Forest. But Forest are still third. They still have the best home defence in the league. But teams like Newcastle play 3 times before we play next. So by the time we play next, we could really be looking up bad. So where are you on the panic scale?
Slightly towards the pessimistic side, but very near the middle. It's kind of, I think, I'm worried about it in a sort of fatigue kind of sense. It's against Manchester United the other week, Milenkovic did that ridiculous short pass just to give them possession. And that's the sign of a little bit of lack of concentration. And that comes from being tired. And that's kind of what's the worry is like, this is the point where actually we need to be 100% on it. And if we're just falling away that little bit now, that could be a problem. Ultimately, even if we finished 6th or 7th and made it, no matter what happens in the FA Cup, finishing 6th or 7th would have snapped your hand off for that at the start of the season. But having been here for so long, it would really, really be disappointing to finish below 5th. And the thing, what today's done is it's basically eating our cushion, is we can't afford any more slip-ups now.
Yeah. And it will feel weird, Forest, if we're not third, because we've been third for so long. I think the Everton away game was when we went second, and then Arsenal went back above us. And I think we've been third pretty much since then. And like you say, had at least 4, 5, sometimes 7 or 8 points this season. So it'll be weird if we come into Newcastle not in the top 5. And, you know, Forest have been asking the questions all season so far, whereas now questions being asked of them at the business time of the season, that's not something you'd be a huge fan of. And they've also been so good at reacting from defeats this season. You know, it's not the first time we've had back-to-back defeats. You think to the Fulham and Newcastle games that we reacted to that with beating City and Arsenal with the draw there. So Forest have been good at that. But what I would say is, I think Colin Fraser said it on the radio afterwards, that we've got to now go away to Spurs. And a lot of the time it's been some poor away performances, then coming back home where we feel comfortable, where we play our best stuff. Now we've got to go away and prove to the league why we are third and why we're third on merit. So it'll be interesting to see how Forest do react. Just last word for the banner that was displayed in the Trent End, Nottingham Forest and Magic, and then a brilliant card of Nuno as a magician. Baz, Forza Guy Boyd doing some brilliant work there again.
It was absolutely fantastic. I was listening to the radio on the way in, and they had him on there, and he was saying, "Yeah, 2:59 today, you'll see it." So I had like that and little thing of anticipation, and they didn't disappoint. They do great work.
They never do, yeah. So thank you to them. And John, who sits next to me but 2, was setting it up last night, and he was like a little kid before I went up dancing about it. So yeah, I think it certainly was their better one. So at least there's one positive to come from the match today, and finished at the City Ground. Forest 0, Everton 1. Thank you for joining me, Baz, and thank you, Adam, for the view from the opposition. And thank you, listener, for listening to our little ramble there. We'll be back for a Friday 5 later on in the week, and the Spurs report the week after. Have a good week, and heads up, Forest are for now still third. Yeah, sorry, I've not done this for a while. Let's try again.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.